Good morning, Chief.
Good morning.
Today is a big day where you will show us your magic, or more precisely, the technique that you have perfected to fit your frame and panel doors inside the opening of the face frame. So get us lined out here. What are you going to teach us today?
Well, to space my doors, I like to use Formica chips.
What?
Yeah, so go into any Home Depot or Lowe's, just swipe some off the shelf, and that's what I use. So
You mean you don't have some expensive, made in Germany gadget that comes in a fancy carrying case to fit your doors?
nope, you don't need it.
My gosh.
So the first thing I do is square up my stiles. I always cut them together. I don't cut them individually.
Now, you told me that you took the time this morning. This is a new saw that you squared out of the box when it was delivered a few weeks ago, but you took the time to check it again this morning. What did you find?
Yeah, it was almost a 16th out of square, and that happens from moving it around.
Wow. So start with a square tool.
First thing I'm going to do is square one end, and then I'm going to space with 2 Formica chips, 2 at the bottom, 2 at the top.
Let me show the viewers where you're going with this so they have some context. You're using the Formica chips to define the margin around the outside of the door in its relationship to the opening in the face frame. And so to get your measurement on your cut lengths, tell us.
Yeah, so I'm gonna stack 4 of them, because that's 1/8 of an inch, 16th at the top and a 16th at the bottom, and that's gonna give me a 12 and 11/16 length. So I'm gonna measure and cut that. Place it in here. I'm going to space it off the Stiles with 2 chips also. So it's a 2 chip minimum when you're at this casino. 2 on the sides, 2 at the top, 2 at the bottom. Okay, so now I have my door with a 1/16 space around the whole door. So now to measure my rails, we're going to do a stub tenon and groove. The bit I have for the router to make my tenon makes a 7/16 long tenon. So what I have to do is add 7/16 together, which makes 7/8, and I have to add that to the width of my opening right here, which is 6 1/4. So my rail length is going to be 7 1/8.
Right.
That gives me the tongue on each side.
Have you ever cut the rails where you forgot to add that length for your tenon?
Yep.
Okay. So you've cut the rails to length.
Yeah, the width still needs to be cut.
That is the height, top to bottom.
Yeah.
Because I think you said your client wanted about a 3-inch tall panel in the middle, so you've got to make that calculation yet. But that's going to follow here in a few more steps.
Yeah.
So it looks like you're cutting those stiles as a group.
Gang cutting.
Your reason for doing that?
Just keeps them all.
Good morning, Chief.
Good morning.
Wow, look at all the parts you have laid out. A big group. What's on the agenda today?
Well, it's time to make the tongues and the grooves in the stiles and rails of the doors. So what I do, I lay them out and I put an X wherever there's a groove, and I put an O where there's a tongue on each of my pieces.
You've got a lot of parts to cut. About how many cuts do you have to make on the router in total this morning?
About 80.
Oh wow! Oh wow! All right. And do you have some special techniques for safety and method that you'll show us?
Well, the one thing you do want to do is use a push block. Again, it's just a piece of plywood, that's all it is. You know, so when you're going through the blade, you want to plunge in. I like to plunge in to the other side of my opening, then I know my piece is clear of the blade, and then I just turn it out and bring it back.
So you've got some reference lines on this sample. You know that the groove and tongue bit is already mated to each other. So now what you're focusing on is getting the height of your bit just right to give you that 3/8 inch reveal, as you call it, on the front of the cabinet.
Yeah, and the bearing on the bit, you can put different bearings on the bit to get a deeper groove and longer tongue if you want. This is set at 7/16, so that's what we're doing.
All right, and your parts are cut accordingly. All right,
Yeah.
That's all coming together, making sense now.
What I want to do is use a push block, obviously to keep your fingers away from the bit. And what I like to do when I'm pushing the piece through, I like to bring my push block to the opposite side of my opening. That way I know I'm clear of the bit, and then I could just turn it out and pull it away and my piece is clear. With these stackable bits, they give you shims. And what I was talking about in an earlier video about the metric plywood, if you're using plywood for your panel in your door, you know, you can adjust.
You mean a veneered plywood is what you're
you
talking
can
about.
adjust it to, you know, however many millimeters it is, 8, 9, 10, 1/4 inch, 5/16, anything you want. You can adjust that bit and accommodate the metric plywood.
I know that you're keen on this particular Freud bit. It saves the carpenter from having to invest in multiple bit sets by size, as well as accommodate a variety of material thickness. All right, well, you'll show us an example of how you use the router first to create the groove.
Yeah, this is one of my real dedicated pieces, so I'll show you exactly what I do with that.
Okay.
So in this instance, the client wanted a 3/8 reveal in the front of the door. So my groove is about a heavy 1/4 inch, but I like to cut the grooves first because first of all, there's more of them to do. And then in my opinion, it's easier to fit the tongue into the groove than vice versa.
More grooves than tongues, you mean?
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
So now that I'm making the tongues on my rails, I'm cutting end grain. So I want to use the feather boards to help hold the piece down. And if you're wondering why I have no throat plate in my lift, is because when I bought the lift, they didn't have the throat plate set in stock. It was back ordered, so this bit doesn't fit in throat plate, so you just got to be careful.
Yeah, what you're not telling us is you just bought this. This is essentially a maiden voyage for this lift, so you realize now that you really have to have those. They won't come soon enough.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So we're using a feather board when we're getting into the end grain. tongues on each side of the rails here, and you've just pressed it together as a dry fit, just taking a quick look at how it all came together. What do you think?
Yeah, so now I'm checking my width again.